Hello and welcome back to the Anti-Anxiety Podcast. I'm your host, Oliver, and our big question on this show is how can we overcome fear and negative emotions and become our most awesome, loving selves in the fastest time possible? Our guest today is Marco Hansell, a successful entrepreneur, spiritual mentor, martial artist, father, and a great friend of mine, as well as just an overall awesome human being. Marco has been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur, Inc. magazine, and is well known for losing $35 million after the downfall of his tech company, and then going on to regain his life and find new levels of inner peace by unwiring some of those stressful habits he picked up along the way that many high-level entrepreneurs share. And now Marco spends his time helping others to become their highest selves in his creator's journey coaching experience. Hello and welcome to the show, Marco. It's good to have you.
Awesome. Nice to have you too. I didn't even know I was a martial artist, so I'm learning new things about myself. But yeah, great to connect, man, and excited about this conversation.
Awesome, man. Yeah. So first, right off the bat, tell us a little bit about your backstory. Like, where did you come from and what led you to finding yourself in that path of building a top 100 fastest growing company? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I started off, think the biggest origin is like being in the beginnings of having my first job when I'm 14, for all of not even 2 weeks, I think. I made it, making like $3.85 an hour. In Detroit was the minimum wage. I'm like, yeah, no, this can't be the thing. Like, I gotta find something more entrepreneurial. So I went into diving into like the candy sales, the like CD sales, all the traditional entrepreneurial things. And from then on out, really became in this bug of like, I get to achieve and I get to build my own. And it wasn't until college that, after experimenting with a lot of different things that completely flopped, but were like awesome, like learning experiences for me, from a record label to a magazine that I had created, that I actually started a business with some of my friends in college, where one of my friends was friends with John Legend at the time before he was famous. And, John's just like this guy who sings. He's like, hey, this guy, John, think he's going to go somewhere. We should do some work with him. So we built his first website. We started doing online marketing for him. And before you know it, like, we're doing digital marketing for some of the biggest acts across the world, from, E40 to Raphael Sadiq to the Lost Boys, moved on to Ludacris, to Chingy, to Bobby Valentino. And I became like this digital guy for a lot of celebrities. And the entire time, my whole drive is this idea that like I can achieve so much from not only my smarts, but like my ability to figure out any problem, to innovate in the world of technology. And I was getting really great results from it, man. Like the entire time, the six-figure business when I'm in college, that then turned into the wonderful story that you mentioned, which is creating a business that, became a multi-million-dollar extravaganza and then a multi-million-dollar downfall. So,
So it sounds like that was a pretty high moment or period in your life when you were kind of, stumbling upon some of your gifts and, the digital space of back when it's, sounds like that was a newer thing, and connecting with all these cool people like John Legend and then so many more after that. It sounds like you were at a really happy period of your life. Is that pretty accurate?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think, the beautiful thing about this journey, and I know that what you're focused on is focusing on this anxiety and really being able to relieve stress, is that I had a lot of high performing, successful things happening in my life. So I wouldn't describe my journey of success as like, oh, it was all horrible. It was like, yeah, having a mansion and like being in the hills and like rubbing shoulders with every freaking possible person that you could imagine, being able to go and be in any place or in any kind of state that you would want, was very uplifting. Like, it was very empowering, but I also had to maintain that, right? And I had propped it up as this thing that I can't let fall, because it became bigger than just the achievement. It became my identity. So it no longer was just this job. It's like, oh, I am this successful guy. I am this guy that makes a lot of money. I am this guy that's powerful. So now anything that looks like it's going to threaten that, like, I am slightly afraid of it. Like, I I got to make sure that I manage this shit. So now this becomes my new maintenance cycle, is how do I maintain this high level, and how do I keep it going higher and higher and higher and higher, right?
Interesting. So what was that like for you when you obviously you're at this high, right? Life is going great. You're having these really cool experiences, meeting new cool people and feeling good because you're winning, you're succeeding. But what was it like to kind of develop that paradigm where you needed to kind of keep it up all the time? Did that make you fearful, or was it just kind of a lingering thing in the background that maybe became more apparent in your the big turning point of your journey that we'll get to?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was a combination of both. Like, there's some parts of me that was consciously aware of what was happening, and some parts of me that probably wasn't, right? Like, there's the framework of I'm living my best life on paper, right? That, like, in reality, one of the issues, particularly when it comes down to people that are high achievers, high performers, right, is that, like, it's like the disease or the symptoms, so to speak, that people aren't looking at you and being like, oh man, I feel so sorry for you. Like, you just seem to have unlimited money and, like, just always living your best life. Like, they're fucking applauding. They're cheersing at you, right? So I'm getting all this affirmation and validation from people. So that feeling of, like, oh, is there any lack? I didn't really understand that. Instead, I would wear those lack things as almost badges of pride, right? Like, I would have sayings like, like, I'm going to live like nobody else does today so I can live like nobody else tomorrow. Then it's this idea that the continual hustle, the grind to maintain this higher and higher and higher status was going to end in this thing where, like, a few years from now, I'm going to be a freaking billionaire. And that's when I'm going to stop to slow down and have a family and do all these other things. But right now, I'm on the grind, and I have to make the sacrifices that are necessary for this grind because I just have a different kind of life and a different capacity than everyone else. So I would watch other people enjoying their lives with less, and I would just say, well, yeah, because they're not capable of doing the big things that I am. So now there's this like responsibility feeling of, like, oh, because I have this capacity, this is now my responsibility, is my duty to maintain this thing and to grow bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So there's this interesting blend of, like, obligation feeling that is actually a chain, and then actually having pride in that obligation because I'm like, oh, I have the capacity to live up to that giant expectation. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of that chain kind of keeps you stuck to that path and, like, almost like there's no way out. And is that a scary thing for you at the prospect of maybe failing and falling out of that? Like,
oh yeah. I mean, I think the thing that's so interesting is that failure for me in the context of ultimate failure was never realistic. One of the first speeches that I got paid to speak on, I actually spoke on failing your way to success. Right. So there was a mentality that I had at that time that if I was making mistakes and if I, was failing or whatever, that, like, I was always innovating, and that I believed very deeply that all innovation has come from somebody that was willing to risk their lives. I mean, like, literally down to, like, the guy who discovered that, apples and bananas and pears were the non-poisonous fruits. There was another guy who was trying some shit out and was like, and died. So, like, yeah, I was like everyone, the innovation, in order for creation to happen, we had to be willing to risk. But there was a certain point where I think what's so interesting, and I just finished reading The Power, the sequel to the Secret, and I always love these books because I think it's like, one part that I appreciate about it is this power of manifestation, this power of speaking things into existence. And the thing that I realized is I was living in a very powerful manifestive role in my business. I was manifesting the fuck out of the results that I wanted, but I also was narrowing the field of what I thought was possible for me to ask for in those manifestations. So then the clarity of, I want to manifest $10 million, didn't have this possibility of, oh, and I can also enjoy my family while I'm manifesting it. And I can also like not be so stressed out while I'm manifesting. It's like, oh, no, 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 no. I'm going to have to do all this hard stuff. I'm going to have to grind and all this other type of things are going to have to happen. I'm going to have to make lots of these sacrifices and I'm going to have this $10 million. Right. So there's this part of me that felt very much in flow because I was getting what I wanted. So I wasn't afraid per se on a continual basis because I had built enough of what you would almost call like the predictive engine in my brain said that every single time Marco tries to do something that he wants, he gets it. But now imagine the first time that doesn't happen in a long time for me. And I'm talking about a train that started off when I was 13, right? When I first realized that tapping into this mindset of somebody that could be an achiever would actually give me this admiration, would give me this love, would allow me to break rules, would be like, yeah, you know what? They tried to kick me out of high school in my last year because I had like, I don't know. I think I had like maybe 20, 30% attendance, but I had a freaking 4.0. I'm getting accepted into all these Ivy Leagues. I'm like, screw you. Like, how are you going to talk to me? So this thing became like my trump card. I'm like, as long as I am winning, then I am invincible. And I became so good at creating that winning track from athletics, from sports to academics to music to then business that I had not truly felt me creating a dream or creating a desire for something and then having the results that I ended up having happen to me at such a magnitude where in the world of my possibilities, the worst case scenario in my life was like, yeah, maybe I'll sell this business for like 30, $40 million. I mean, oh man, that would really suck, but I'll still have a few $1,000,000. That's the perspective I had. You could have never told me that I would leave this thing with the company owing me hundreds of thousands of dollars and me being broke as I've ever been in my freaking life in almost 10 years. So that fear never quite registered because it wasn't a reality to me. It wasn't a possibility. And then when it was fucking terrifying. Oh, so terrifying. So terrifying to see an identity that I worked so hard to uphold and watch it tremble in between my fingers like little grains of sand that I just can't hold on to because they're just slipping through my fingers. And as I'm watching it all fall apart, there's almost like this beautiful thing that's happening of like, as that identity is dying, it began to make room for the person that is now having this conversation with you, that is very much living in a whole different level of an understanding of my joy. But I needed to clear the way for that identity that I had spent a good 2 decades reinforcing.
And so it sounds like that huge shift and that huge failure, almost, if you want to call it that, was what was necessary to create that space for the transformation.
Oh, right. Biggest blessing ever. Biggest blessing ever. Like, it's so great. And I mean, you want to put it into context. There's a point, and I know we didn't get into this fully, and to color in for the audience a little bit, the journey that Oliver spoke about earlier, that goes from my, John Legend, Ludacris, all these wonderful artists, into me creating the business that literally founded the influencer marketing space, right? First year, $10,000 investment, turn it into $2 million. That $2 million grows into the 79th fastest growing company. The company becomes valued at more than $40 million. I'm turning down $40 million offers to acquire my company because that's too small. I am living in the state of sheer abundance in every way, to the extent that like $1 million months, if it was less than that, were like months that I'm complaining about. I'm like, well, we only did 800,000 this month. We're like, this is the perspective and mind state that I was in. And then to be in a space where from that pinnacle And then from sitting down in Facebook's offices and them talking about acquiring us, less than a year later, I've lost control of the board. I've raised capital trying to save the company because we had some fluke accidents happen with some of our largest customers that ended up dropping out our cash flow. And now I'm having to question, how hard am I going to hold on to this dream? Right. And luckily for me, Facebook didn't buy us. Luckily for me, I wasn't able to recover from what should have been a bump in the road on my journey to the greatness and the $1 billion and all of that shit. And luckily for me, I had that detour, because if it continued, I would have been even further away from the kind of person, I think in my mind, the kind of person that may have been able to accept and embrace, I don't want to call it humbling, I want to call it the humanity that I got to really settle into once I stripped away the achievement, the identity, the masks, right? Because if I would have continued, and then now here I am, and I got $40 million, $50 million, $100 million, $200 million in the bank, and I'm continually reaffirming the I am this winner. I don't know how much longer it would have taken for me to realize that the only thing I was investing into was winning and not really like living the life that I wanted to live.
And what is that difference? You mentioned that humanity and that life you want to live. What is that really? When you say that, are you referring to like real happiness, right? Because I think a lot of people, the topic of success and happiness, there's a lot of different perspectives on that. And I'm curious to hear what you really mean by that.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I know they did this study about happiness and money, the correlation between it, and it's something like after like $70,000, they're like, yeah, once you're past sort of like the basic bare bone essentials, like there's not really any correlation between people being insanely wealthy and their lives being any better than the average person, right? And in fact, what I used to say, and I'll give you an example. It's like one of my friends, who was like a little brother to me, he ended up starting to trade like stocks while I was back at my company, and he was making like a good $30,000-$40,000 a year, right? I'm making $1 million a month, and this guy left the States and he was traveling the world, and he had no time clock. He had nobody to report to. He was experiencing so many things. And I remember talking to him, and he used to tell me about like how he wants to be like me. And I was like, dude, like you actually figured it out, because I've actually built a beautiful prison.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm going to be more like you, dude.
Yeah. I'm like, I have to maintain this thing. At that time, my bills were like $300,000-$400,000 a month. Right. It's like, so like I couldn't just stop and be like, oh, whatever. I don't want to work this month. It was like I literally was creating the momentum of have to in my life to maintain this machine. So when you talk about that happiness, when you talk about that freedom, I look at it as my life was being driven largely by the maintenance of this identity. But if you put on a list, like what are the things that are required to maintain this identity, at least what I thought was required, and then what are the things that Marco would really want to do, that if you ask Marco, like, hey Marco, if you had all the time in the world, all the money in the world, all the freedom in the world, what would you want to do? Little Vesica Pisces, the little circles that cross over, a lot of that shit was way over here in a circle all by itself that had nothing to do with the circle of my business, right? And I was investing into that business because I thought that, one, I can't possibly disappoint other people or myself by not living up to that identity. Because if I'm not that identity, if I'm not that successful person, who am I? So I'm not even giving myself the opportunity to imagine a world where I can have these things that I want in my life without also being that identity. And the reality was that that identity was the exact thing that was keeping me from having those things that I wanted in my life that I didn't even need money for, Oliver, that I didn't need a big business for, that I didn't need to be in Forbes for. It was
Very
literally
curious,
like waking up.
what were those things for you
Oh my gosh.
that you're finding that really bringing that happiness that you were looking for maybe the whole
Yeah.
time in the wrong places?
Love, joy, acceptance, freedom, play, right? Travel, right? The ability to take each one of those things and then say every single day, what do I want to do? What do I choose to do? Not what do I have to do? Not what am I required to do? And I think that oftentimes when we think about language, right, and how much we limit ourselves, we wake up in the morning, man, I had to go to work. I have to pay these bills. I have to do this. Like, you don't have to do any of that shit. You don't have to do any of it. So when you step away from that for a moment and you say, well, I am choosing to do this, then it starts bringing in more of that responsibility of, okay, then why am I choosing to do this? And is this something that I would choose to do? Am I choosing to do it willingly? Am I choosing to do it because other people expect me to do it? And in a lot of cases, I was choosing to do things that I thought I had to do because other people were expecting me to do it, because I had a board expecting me to do it, because I had employees expecting me to show up in a certain way. And at the end of the day, I'm the one that chose that destiny. I'm the one that created the exact mindset, the boundaries, the limitations around my business identity. So the story and the moral of the story is not money is bad. It's not, oh, success is bad. It's like, hey, like I chose to create a successful prison rather than allowing the business to become a tool and a conduit for me to express my fullest love. I allowed the business to decide how I was going to express myself.
Wow.
So yeah.
Powerful words, man. And what I think is really interesting about what you bring up and what you mentioned earlier is like kind of there's that invisible disease happening. It's kind of your words, right? Like for you, it was being a high achiever, which most people, right, it's kind of celebrated in society, yet
Yeah.
it's also like you create this expectation of success and you cannot disappoint or let people down or not meet these standards. Otherwise, you're nothing, right? Otherwise, you're not good enough, for you're trash, you're this, you're that, right? And that becomes very, like you said, that was your orchestrated prison that you maybe unconsciously chose for yourself. But it's interesting because that goes kind of unnoticed, I think, a lot, because and the exterior, it's so easy to be like Marco, how could you ever not be satisfied or not happy? Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting for people to hear that from somebody, in your shoes. But what was really powerful ultimately is when you started consciously choosing the life that you wanted. Right.
Yeah.
And you stopped living by other people's expectations, society's expectations for your success, what you should be doing for work, how you should be acting, and this and that, right? And as you may know, like the work that I do is I'm a social anxiety coach. So I'm helping people with that kind of thing a lot, right? Is letting go of other people's expectations and judgments of how you should be, and then just expressing through that freedom. And I think you're absolutely like living through that. Like I got to meet you recently in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. And out of everybody I've met in my life, my young, humble life, you're one of the most free, joyful, loving people who knows how to really play that I've ever met. So it's really
that.
100%, man. You're welcome. And it's so super cool to, to hear more about your backstory and how that's really shifted for you and how you've been able to do that. And so I really want to know, not just for my sake, but for everybody who may be listening or watching right now, is how did you make that shift to finally letting go of what people expected for you and letting go of
Yeah.
that kind of that mental prison?
Yeah. It started off with questions. So, what I'll give you a progression. The progression definitely came from the back against the wall feeling, right? There was a point where I had just raised some more capital for my company. I'd lost control of the board. I was feeling like the business was draining me energetically, right? And one of my friends, ironically, so Garen, I don't know if Garen Jones. They just did still like a little feature on him.
That's so funny. I literally just discovered him the other day and was showing it to my girlfriend. We were loving it.
Oh, that's hilarious. So
funny.
yeah, me and him
Cool
go back
synchronicity.
like 15 years. I actually used to rep him at Universal when he was an artist.
And you mentioned
Um,
the Empowered Brotherhood too. Did you have a part in that? I think.
no, no, I
Okay.
didn't have any part in that. But yeah, I do know it. I know a lot of the guys there. We were in a lot of groups together. But Garen actually, I called him and I was talking to him about like what was going on. And he was like, Marco, bro, like if you talk to me about this mopey Marco stuff one more time, like we're not gonna be friends anymore. And he was like, I need you to go to this leadership training, this MITT thing. And a friend of mine, Caduce, had tried to get me to do it like 3-4 years earlier. And I was like, yo, that shit is for like broken people. That's for the people that like don't have their lives together. I got my life together, right? But right now, I'm feeling pretty broken. So I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm down for it. I will go do this. So I went into this session, and the very first question that I got asked by one of the trainers was, who would you be if you were no longer Marco, the successful CEO speaker? And I got stumped. I was like, I don't know. Like that's my everything, my every bit of my identity of my day was surrounding this idea of this winner, this idea of this CEO. I didn't even play without it being work. I'm playing with clients and like we're partying, and it's like I always have some agenda where the time that I'm spending is going to make me money, is going to profit me, right? So there's a purpose behind every single thing. So that question hit me, and it opened me up to starting to look at the rest of my life. And when I looked at the rest of my life, I took this mindset of the high achiever that I already had, and I said, okay, so what if we tried to high achieve in the other areas of our lives too? I started paying more attention to my friends, to my family, to my health, to all these things. And I started noticing something. I noticed that as I paid attention to that, I was actually capable of still being business me and actually accomplishing things and doing things the way that would fulfill me in a full way. And yes, did it rub some people the wrong way? Of course. But it was my company. Literally, like I was the person that could set the stage for how I wanted to act. So I started noticing that, and then there was a certain point where I looked around at my life, and the only thing in my life that wasn't going up and to the right, continually flying into stupendous land, was my business. I was like, wow, everything else around me is thriving now. And that's when I met Anna, the current mother of my wonderful child. And that's a whole beautiful part of this story. And she asked me the next important question, which came from me talking about my realization. I told her, I was like, I realized that I wasn't really paying attention to my whole life. And I don't want anyone else to go down the path that I did. Whew. Oh man, it's a lot of emotion that comes up for that feeling, because it's really hard to capture it in one day, but to really understand that like for almost 20 years I had put the priority of like winning and achieving ahead of everything. And as I achieved more and more and more and more and more, I realized that like if this situation had never happened, if I had died that year, right, or even the year before all the craziness happened, I would have been miserable. I would have been, probably on my journey to the Netherlands or whatever world we go to when we pass, like being like, fuck, fuck, fuck. Why didn't I start living soon enough? I didn't know that time was gonna go away from me, and all I have to show for it is millions of dollars, right? That's the feeling. So I said to her, to Anna, I said, I want to share that with other people, that like all these things that they're chasing, these things they're achieving, I've achieved them. And it never feels like it's enough. Oh, that my $100,000 goals became $1 million goals. My $1 million goals became $10 million goals. My $10 million goals became $100 million goals. My 100 million became $1 billion goals. I'm like, that wasn't gonna stop. And that had nothing to do with what I was really looking for, Oliver. And that question that came from her was, Marco, because I said, I want to teach people this, but I can't because I'm the CEO of this company. She said, well, why can't you just replace yourself? You're the CEO. And again, another simple question. I'm like, wait, you're right. This is my company. I have the ability to leave. I never thought of this, you crazy woman. Like, I didn't know. I didn't think that, because in my world, it wasn't a possibility that I could leave, that I could not be that identity. So I put the handcuffs on myself, right? And I had the key. They weren't even locked. They weren't even locked. I could just literally do like this, but I created my own prison. And that question, that got me thinking, and it really got me feeling like, what if she's right? Like, what if I could leave this, and what if that would actually be the realest representation of who I am? And unfortunately, that wasn't the moment that I moved on. That was the moment that I started diving deeper into me, but I still was determined to save this business. And then the universe put my back way against the wall, and I had a board meeting where I am running on fumes, pouring money into this company. I have billionaire investors, and the company has money. And on the board meeting, I'm letting them know that, like, hey, we're raising this next $10 million round, and your CEO is struggling to maintain his life. It's like, I think it's in your best interest as a business to make sure that that's not happening. Like, if I'm going to stay focused on raising this money. And the board told me, Marco, sometimes CEOs have to eat ramen. And I said, this is the point. This right here is the point, that you choose to either continue this, knowing what you know, knowing that this is not the source of your happiness. This is not the source of your joy. And are you going to stay so committed to it that finishing this journey becomes more important than living your life, than respecting you and what you truly desire? Or are you going to choose to step out of this, to take that leap? No, things aren't perfect. Yes, right now the company owes me a whole buttload of money. If I leave right now, I'm going to walk away not only with nothing, I'm going to walk away in debt. But I get to choose. I made that choice. I sent in my resignation. I left the company, and it was the most devastating feeling, and simultaneously the most freeing feeling I had ever felt. It's like the feeling of being naked. I was like, I don't have anything. I don't have bills to worry about because I don't have any fucking money. I don't have a business, a board to report to. I don't have people suing me. I don't even have people calling for me because I don't have the things that people used to want from me. So the freedom of not being needed was also the freedom to choose what direction I wanted to go in without people telling me, here's what I needed to do, because I already did what they didn't want me to do. And that opened up my world, Oliver. It opened up my world. And if anything that somebody could take away from this would be this mindset of whether you've had to make that choice or not, we've all been in the position of thinking about or holding on to that thing that we think is going to define us, that if we lost it, it will be the end of us. That relationship, that will be the end of us. That job, that like, I can't lose this job. And being in that space of knowing that on the other side of the loss that I thought was the most devastating thing in the world, not only am I still alive, I'm thriving. I'm thriving. And anybody that finds themselves in that position where they're compromising themselves for something that they think they have to do, we're limiting the power and potential of the universe, of our God, to give us the blessings that we deserve, the abundance that we deserve, without also eating poison, for lack of a better word, right? It's like you don't have to be in pain in order to receive your blessings. That's the exact opposite of what a blessing is. So yeah, I just went all in on that. I haven't thought of that in a way that brought me back into that moment. But it just brought me back to there, and realizing and feeling that freedom, that feeling of freedom, that feeling of, wow, I don't have to do this. I never had to.
Wow.
Man.
Speechless, man.
Whoa. Yeah, I guess everything happens perfectly for a reason, man, because I think I needed you to bring me back into that, because it just reminds me of why I love what I'm doing today.
Mhm.
It's
Just
like,
now you
that's yeah. Just now it reminds me that, like, this, sharing stuff like this, doing coaching, like being in a place where now, like, my abundance is attached to supporting people to go through those journeys of feeling their infinite power. And I'm like, that's beautiful. That's awesome. Awesome. And I make way less money than I made before, but I feel so much richer. So much richer. So
Yeah.
much freer.
Yeah.
I wake up every day and I decide whether or not I'm just gonna freaking watch TV, play video games, or whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, and that sounds like the simplest thing, but like, I have that freedom of choice, freedom of time, freedom of space, and acceptance for, like, however I decide to show up. And I didn't allow myself to have that before. I had a definition of what it meant to be a good Marco. And I think we all have that, whether it's this achiever version of us or the version of us that's supposed to be the best son or a good father or whatever it is, but we've created some identity story that we're failing to live up to, and that maybe one day we'll get there. And we never get there until we accept that we already are. Like, oh man, wow. Thank you for asking that.
Hey,
Wow.
thank you so much for sharing that. I'm just letting you do your magic. I'm just sitting back.
Man, yeah, that's find you a purpose and a mission that fills you up. Not something that you think you have to do because it's your only choice. Because there's the thing I always say is, like, when we believe that we have to, right? We're not only robbing ourselves of power, but we're robbing whatever we believe in, our God, our universe, of power, as if it doesn't have the power to give us what we desire in the way that we want it. This is the best that it can do.
Mhm.
And when I say this is the best I can do, I'm literally saying this is the best that God can do. This is the best the universe can do. This is what it gave me. Right? Or I think I'm some special brand of fucked up that
Mhm.
like the universe skipped over. That story. They're like, yeah, everybody else is getting it, but not me. It's
But I'm
that
cursed.
I'm the cursed person. It's like in the both sides of like the I'm special and better than, or the I'm cursed. Both of them are like, if you would just realize your own insignificance, you would gain so much power. You'd be like, do you realize how little the world, the universe cares about what choices you are making? It didn't send Marco and Oliver down onto Earth and say, okay, I hope you do a good job being an Oliver. It was like, and there is Oliver, which you didn't even have a freaking name. Even that in and of itself that's a whole nother story. But like this, that fact that like you have already been perfect, and then you've decided to create the layers to disqualify yourself, to say, well, but what about how good I am at Call of Duty? Well, but what about how good I am at basketball? But
You know,
what about how good of a kisser I
30
am?
kill streak. Am I good enough
Yeah.
now?
Am I good enough now? Like, it's like, well, if you say so. But like we trick ourselves into thinking that our made up rules are like the universal law.
But
Oh
what you're
man.
saying is we, at the core, at a baseline, we're already perfect.
Already.
But it's our own belief systems that we choose, that sometimes
Yes.
we learn from others, but ultimately we choose to put
We
those handcuffs
choose it.
on. That is the only thing stopping us from feeling absolutely more than good
Mm-hmm.
enough, and
Yeah.
feeling like you're describing.
Oh. And then knowing that like that gives you the freedom to recognize that I can still choose to dress the way I dress, decide to have a preference for getting on this podcast. Like it's not like your human choice disappears because you're like, oh well, nothing matters. It's like, no, 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 no. It doesn't matter. So you can choose anything. Then it's like, oh, I get it. I get it. So you're not saying I'm insignificant, like I don't mean anything. You're saying that my choices don't carry significance with them.
Mhm.
It's not
That
my
it's not that you're
yes,
unimportant or that you are not
yes.
valuable, but it's that there is no wrong way to do it. There
There's
is no
no wrong
wrong
way to do
decision,
it.
and any way you want to go,
Oh,
perfectly fine.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's freedom, man. That is freedom. That is the freedom that I hope that people experience in their lifetime, because there's so many people, myself included, that may have gone my whole life and not felt that and not understood that. And I could have spent my entire life like trying to be the best businessman and then turn it into the best father, like, and then the best this and the best that. And it's like, it's not that my aspirations stop, right? Like I don't fall short of desiring to constantly be
Bro.
better at whatever it is that I'm doing. But now I call it this, right? Like there's this baseline, there's this line here that's Marco in the continuum of Marco, that from day zero was already at a 10 out of 10, already here. And there's nothing that I will ever do that'll shake that. I'm a 10 out of 10 in embodying me and being me. These other layers here, father, businessman, like these little sine waves that are going up and down and fluctuating, that shit, it has nothing to do with the fact that I'm going to continue to be that 10 out of 10. So I can be the 10 out of 10 and say I am doing a great job at being, and you know what? I'd like to be a better father. But I know that how good of a father I am is a grading scale that I'm creating, that I'm judging, that I'm reflecting on, and that in that moment I am always doing the best job that I can do for that moment. and I can always aspire to do something different the next day. But like that is the trippiest concept for us to really live in that duality of like our choices are not this linear scale of good, bad, better, worse choices. They're just choices. They're just choices. And we're the people that assign the meaning. So, assign the meaning that you want to the choices that you make, but nobody is forcing you to do that.
Mm.
Nobody but you.
Got it. So I think, yeah, great lesson in taking personal responsibility in that.
Yeah.
So there's a few more questions I'd love to ask just to get a few more things that I think will be really helpful for the audience. If that's all right
Awesome.
with you.
Sure. Let's do it.
Another question is, in a few more ways, how is your life different now versus when it was when you were, I guess, in that business mindset? You mentioned like freedom, but was there anything else that stands out for you?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think the freedom it like dovetails in a lot of things, right? So one, the most apparent thing is in my way of living. So I used to have a very like almost what's the value of this kind of judgment on the decisions that I made, the people I hung around, the places that I went. There had to be a very tangible and real measurable value that I was going to get that usually tied to like money and moving forward in status or something, right? So it's like, oh, who are we hanging out with? Okay. Who's that? Why am I spending my time with that person? Okay, no, that doesn't sound like something that is worthy of me placing value on. Not because that person is lowly and not a good person, but because I have a duty. I have a duty to focus my energy on things that are going to improve the security of this identity of Marco the winner, Marco the CEO, Marco the salesperson. So like the types of conversations, friendships, and experiences that I get to have now that I allow myself to have are such a wide range. I can meet people and the furthest thing from my mind is, what do you do? I don't give a fuck. I don't care what you are doing and contributing. I care in the sense of I'm excited to learn about your passions, right? But like that idea that every meeting, every interaction can hold value, even if it's not something that I can quantify at that moment. The value might be for the other person. The value might be for something that I'm not even aware of. So like that started allowing me to see the entire world with this richness of appreciation. Right.
Wow.
Like I saw people differently. Like people literally looked different to me, Oliver. Like they looked prettier. They looked more beautiful. I was like, oh, I haven't even seen you properly.
Wow.
Because I've seen you through a lens of what my status symbols and achievement symbols are seeing. Because remind you, right? I'm doing the manifestation thing so well, and this is the part that's so interesting when like people you think about manifestations, like you can manifest the hell out of some really negative shit. Like it doesn't have a like
Only
good
positive.
bad to it. Yeah, it's like so like I was very much like curating my experience to fit this identity, and I was doing it very well. I was like, I'm only going to attract people like this and only be in conversations like this and only that. So that is what my world became. So there's a certain richness to the diversity of my world now, that allows me to experience a lot. And then that also means that there's a richness to how I express myself. So I'm no longer known as just the business guy. It's like I get to write poetry, I get to rap, I get to dance, I get to play staff, I get to play drums. Like I get to be so many things that in some stages of my life, I was, and then I stopped because that didn't fit the businessman role, right? It's like I used to play trumpet and play the keys and like all these musical things. And when I became a businessman, I'm like, well, that doesn't fit the role. So we have to stop those things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so there's parts of me that I literally put on hold in existence because they didn't fit the momentum of that identity. So now imagine all of those parts getting to play again. That's what you get to experience, right? That's what everyone gets to experience, is that playful Marco who's like, all these parts have been like, oh man, Marco's been locking
We're
us up
back,
for
baby.
years.
Yeah. We are
It's a
back in
party.
business.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I told you, I wrote my first rap in 15 years, like a month ago.
Oh, nice, man.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Even that took a while to come back for me to be like, oh, I haven't written though in a while. What would that feel like? All right. And that's like this, all these colorful parts of me, my desires, like all of that stuff means a world of difference. Like my every day is so different than what it used to be before.
Got it. Awesome. So I also want to ask, very quickly, what are your, like, let's say top 3 to 5 core values?
Man. Ooh, let's see. So I think got to go with the popular and obvious one of love. Yeah, love, love, love. And I mean, it's so powerful because when you just think about everything from like future, past, anxiety, guilt, resentment, like all of those things, all those frequencies literally can't exist in love, right? So not that they are bad, which is another thing that's so fucking beautiful about this, right? But that their energy doesn't sustain itself, and you're not stuck in a resentment loop if you're sending love to it. So when I start thinking about from a value perspective, what drives so much of my life is me centering back into that love at all times, right? Appreciating my world, appreciating who I'm around, appreciating conversations like this, appreciating the beauty of the invitation, appreciating your amazing smile, like appreciating like Anna, appreciating Amateo, appreciating the air conditioning that I have. Like, I mean, it can be from the simplest things, right? But like when you sit in that and you realize like, oh, there's a lot of stuff to love around me. This is pretty awesome. That's one. My second one I would say is curiosity. So this one really plays very well into like the podcast that I'm about to create with one of my friends. I think I might have mentioned this to you, is that you're not going to like this podcast. And the whole point is we're talking through a lot of controversial topics with the intention of bringing unity to people by making uncomfortable conversations sexy, fun, and safe, right? And part of the baseline behind all of it is it's built on this intense curiosity of like, well, what if you grew up like the clan member and had those experiences that clan member did? It's like, are you telling me that you are just such a uniquely different person that you wouldn't have made those same choices? Or is there some curiosity in this world that like the ability to start questioning every perspective that you have, perspectives that other have, asking why and why not, like that there's this richness of like, wow, everything is possible when I am curious, right? When I'm curious, when I'm stuck in this is the way it is and that's it, then I close down my possibilities, which would then bring me to probably the third value. I think my third one is going to be openness. Yeah. So I guess I can be curious and not necessarily be open. But in my openness, I'm open to infinite possibility. So I'm open to the fact that a problem could be solved a million different ways, open to the fact that like I could be misinterpreting every single person in the world. I'm open to anything, right? And that those three things of like I can send love to my world, to everyone around me. I can sit in my curiosity about the experience that I'm in, and I can be open to the infinite possibilities and directions that it could go in, right? And that openness, I think I'm gonna dovetail a fourth one because I'm open to the fact that even though you said three, I'm gonna choose four.
That's why I said 5, right?
Oh, you said five? Oh,
Three, two, three,
oh,
two,
three to
five.
five. Oh, okay, yeah.
My
So
limiting openness, right?
yeah. So the openness is this acceptance, right? Is that like when we tie together the openness of possibility with the acceptance, it's like we're combining the openness and the love. It's like I get to send love to all those possibilities. So I'm not just open to the fact that anything could happen. I'm open to the fact that anything that does happen is something I still get to love, right? And that woo man, those four put together, instant life orgasms.
Yeah.
I think, yeah,
Oh,
it's very
yeah.
powerful.
Awesome, man. No, so I'm also curious, I'm sure you could speak endlessly on this next question, but something quick would be good too. Like, what do you do on a daily basis? What's a daily practice that you have to vibrate higher and to become your highest version? If you could share something quick for the audience.
Yeah. Well, first is I accept the fact that I already am my highest version. And that every day I'll continue to change. The second is that what I love doing is I actually have a little medley like morning routine that includes me getting up, and I actually do two different things. I usually create a like freestyle song about the great day that I'm starting, right? And it's gonna talk about like these simple things that are like, it's not this like deeply ritualistic meditative practice. It's literally playful for me to wake up in my playfulness of like, Marco, you're about to have a great day. Marco, you're gonna have a great old day. Today is an amazing day. Today is an amazing day. It's meant to be silly because I'm jumping into my day like, yo, like this day is amazing. And I know that if I'm starting off with that vibe, I'm setting that intention, I'm setting that feel. I then like pop into the mirror and I say, today is a beautiful day and you're the perfect person to experience it. I pop down, do a little workout, like a little mini quick workout. Usually I get into my body and I do some like stretching, some yoga. I meditate. I either do like some of the Joe Dispenza meditations. I even created my own affirmation track of
For
like
yourself.
me. Yeah, me literally. Yep, I recorded it, mixed it, all that stuff. So I have me as well with my own affirmations. And then after that, I go into my creative. So I usually am freestyling, rapping. I have also something that I do in the morning, which is I list out the things that I did the day before and I recite those things as if I am my greatest fan, right? So it's not just like, oh yeah, yesterday I got a new client. It's like, yesterday, Marco, you got a new client. Oh man, I'm so proud of you, right? Like it's like I get into that celebratory energy. So and this and usually in the morning I decide whether or not I'm going to go do most of that at the beach. So you're talking about like before most people have started their day, like I primed myself with love, with affirmation, with play, with creativity, with expression, with self-celebration. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready for that day to be exactly the beautiful thing that it can be. And I get to see my wonderful Anna and Amateo and fill myself up with hugs and joy from them, and ground into that family energy. But it's like this thing where, for me, I've made my time and energy and the importance of me connecting to those things more important than me getting busy. Right? Like I know people, and myself included, that used to wake up and the very first thing I'm doing is, what emails do I have? What have I missed?
Mm,
What have I'm locking into the frequency of, what do other people need from me?
okay.
Instead of grounding into like, what do I want to give to myself this morning? How do I want this day to move about? What energy do I want to put into this day? And if you think about the whole, like, we are what you are, what you eat, you are what you listen to, you are what you know talk about, you are who you hang around, like all of those things are so important into feeding into the energy that we're going to start creating. So it's damn near a crime if you're not spending dedicated time really programming in to your day the things that you truly desire, the frequencies that you want. For me to spend the time meditating with self, spending the few minutes, and keeping in mind none of this stuff has to be hours, right? Like sometimes I meditate for 5 minutes, and I just make sure that I get a meditation in. It's like it's not a competition. It's not about how much of it that I'm doing. It's just the fact that I'm doing it, that I'm putting forth that energy, and then setting the stage for, like, okay, I want to attract more of that into my day. That's the energy that I want to attract. So yeah,
Love that.
it's
That's
a small
really,
little routine.
yeah, that was the best answer I could have asked for, dude. Thank you. That was great.
Yeah,
I'm,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
probably gonna like rewatch this podcast or taking notes on this last part. Like, oh shit, start applying it myself. I really, really loved how you talked about being your biggest fan and
Oh, so
celebrating
important.
your previous day's wins from that
Hmm.
perspective, because that's
Yeah,
huge,
so
right?
important.
Because so often we try to achieve that kind of validation from others, but when you can step in and give that high
We can be
level,
it. Yeah.
that's
We can be it.
amazing.
That's
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 amazing.
like the self-love shit to its fullest. And the thing that's
Yeah,
so crazy is the distinction of your biggest fan is so important. Because I remember when I actually started this, and I would just write down my achievements and then read
yeah,
them. And I was like, these aren't really hitting the way I want them to. And I know why, because I was reading it like it was just this to-do list, like, that I did this yesterday and I did that yesterday, and
yeah,
it's whatever.
whatever. Uh-huh.
Well, yeah, whatever. Like, we'll see what I do today. But it's like really literally being like, yo, what would your biggest fan say? And that biggest fan could be a literal fan. It could be a parent for you, if you embody somebody in your life that feels that way about you, like you can do no wrong, and literally be like, yo, how would that person who believes that I can do no wrong, that I walk on freaking water, how would they talk about my day?
Mhm.
Because I bet you they would have a lot more joy and celebration for me than some of the things and ways that I truly celebrate myself right now. So we get to embody those parts of us that are inside of us that may not be the natural me. The natural me might think about my day, and the first thing I might say is, man, I didn't do 2 of those things on my to-do list, and completely not even remember the 20 things that I did. But the biggest fan doesn't even fucking care about those 2 things. He's like,
Yeah.
whoa,
It's
man,
like you
like,
did nothing. It's like
you
you're
did
still
nothing.
Marco.
So
It's
Marco,
Marco.
whoa, it's Marco. Look at him
Oh my
living, look at him
god, I
waking
can't
up.
believe it.
Yes.
My favorite. And you're literally just like on the couch eating
Not
Cheetos,
doing
whatever, and like playing
anything.
Call of Duty. He's like,
Yeah.
oh my
Look at
god,
how he's playing video
Marco, holy
games. It's so
shit.
amazing. Well, you're so
I love you
cool,
so
dude.
much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I get an
That's
autograph, man? Yeah.
you got it. You got it. Like, and everyone deserves that. And we don't need to wait for somebody else to be that for us. Right? It's like, and notice too, because I've done this with a few people, and I've had people get uncomfortable, right, in that process. And it's an awesome notice moment of like, oh, it's hard for you to jump into that person that celebrates you. Why?
Yeah, ponder that.
Right?
What's going on
Like
there?
even that becomes, so every part of it is a moment. It's like when you're realizing like, oh, I don't feel like I deserve to be celebrated. Like that's, I love this. I love this thing, man. I love how such simple lessons and things that are like tools that we all have that we can use at our fingertips
It's true.
to live our fullest expansive selves. Not, it's not college, it's not, $1 million. It's like literally like stuff that's like stuff we knew when we were a kid, playing imagination. Like,
Yeah. And what's really stood out so far in this podcast episode is like the questions
mhm,
and the impact the right question can have. And
yeah,
when you mention these big turning points in your life, right? Like one of the ones you mentioned, like when Anna, your woman, she asked you like, what if you just replace somebody in the business?
yeah,
And it was like poof, open up a whole new world of possibilities, right?
never thought it.
And,
Mhm,
and yeah, just those questions are so powerful.
yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how much more time you have. How much time do you have?
I have to wrap up.
Okay.
Or
So
I'm sorry. I get to wrap up
fair
because I
enough.
choose to be in this next workshop.
Okay. So two rapid fire questions, if that's okay.
Okay.
And then we'll cut it. Okay.
Okay.
So number one is, what do you feel like most people misunderstand about you? And what would you tell those people?
Wow. People most misunderstand. There's like the answer of what I think people misunderstand about me. And then there's the what do I think is truly misunderstood. Um Man, that's tough. That's tough. I think I'm gonna go ahead and say the one that I think, which is my own like insecurity that I believe people think about me, um, is that they think that I think that I am better than them in some way, right? Because I've had some of the achievements that people externally would look at as great or grand or whatever, or because I may appear to be like, oh, he's got all of his stuff together or whatever. Like, and I think that yeah, the clarification that I would make is I'm not better than anybody. I don't think that I'm better than anybody. I think that I'm aware of my capability, my capacity, and I've tapped into my self-love in a way that everybody can, right? And in a way that like if you haven't tapped into that, I notice it. So the feeling of better or worse is not that. It's just it's almost like me. Sometimes I can get into the mind state of like, like, oh my gosh, you haven't grabbed on to this self-love. Like it's so amazing. And when I am feeling shitty and when I am going off the deep end currently in my life, not 5 years ago, right? This is not this story of how I used to be, like in the situation that you were. It's like I still go through stuff every single day, to insecurities every single day, to issues every single day, to financial worries, to all of those things. But like now I understand how much I love me. And in that love for me, what that means is I won't compromise me for someone else. So what you might look at as arrogance, or I don't, care about other people, or he's, pushing his ideas and it only works for him because he's special. It's like, if you say so, that's not what it is. That's not the energy. The energy is I am attempting to be the example of what it looks like to live with you and the love for you at the center. In essence, being purposely selfish. And here's the trippy part. If you and me are one, if this whole world is one, then me being selfish is still serving you, right? So there's a negative connotation that I think can be
If you agree
associated
that
to
self,
that.
if you agree that self is others, then yeah,
Yes.
you would be
Yeah.
serving
Yeah.
me.
So yeah, that's that one. It's a great question. These are awesome questions, Oliver. You
Thank
should
you.
really start a podcast.
I know. I've been thinking about it. And your answers are phenomenal. It's a big part of it. So last question really is, if you could implant one belief into the mind of everyone right now, what would it be and why? Very quick.
You are enough. You always have been. That's the one. 100%. Yeah. And why is that so important? Is all the tension, all the struggle, all of the fight to become something, to strive for something from a place of lack would disappear if you realize that, if you understood that about yourself. And that enoughness is not a sufficiency like, oh, that's just enough to get by. It's like, no, you're more than enough. Like, I assure you, every single thing that you are desiring to be, to create, you already are. Right? And your ability to realize that, to become that, to embody that is literally sitting within inside you.
Awesome.
That's it.
Great answer. Great answer.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, I think this is a good place to wrap. I know you got that workshop to go to.
Yeah.
This
Bro,
has been
this was great.
It's been the most legendary interview I could have ever asked for. So
this
powerful,
is
Marco.
literally probably one of my funnest ones too, man. And I've done a lot of podcasts. This was enjoyable. So I appreciate the questions 100%. And your openness and obviously your energy and presence always, man.
And my love and my curiosity and
Yeah. Keep going.
Well, thank you once again, man. I love you so much. I cannot wait till we get to meet each other again in person.
Yeah.
And for those watching who are interested to follow this amazing human being, why wouldn't you want to after this? His Instagram is Hansell. That's MHANSELL. And then his website, if you want to, potentially work with Marco, have him coach you or help you out, is marcohansell.com. MarcoHansell.com. So those are his socials. Go check him out. He's an amazing person and he posts some really good content. But anyways, I'll let you go, man. Thank you so much again. It's been an amazing episode of the Anti-Anxiety Podcast. And what can I say? Thank you so much, man.
Awesome. Appreciate you.
All right. You have a great one.
All right.